Alan Stewart Paton was a South African author and anti-apartheid activist. Family. Paton was born in Pietermaritzburg, Natal Province, the son of a minor civil servant. After attending Maritzburg College, he earned a Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Natal in his hometown, followed by a diploma in education. After graduation, Paton worked as a teacher, first at the Ixafor High School, and subsequently at Maritzburg College. While at Ixafor he met Dorrie Frances Lusted. They were married in 1928 and remained together until her death from emphysema in 1967. The life together is documented in Paton's book Contagion, For You Departed, published in 1969. They had two sons. Early career. He served as the principal of Deep Kloof Reformatory for Young Offenders from 1935 to 1949, where he introduced controversial progressive reforms, including policies on open dormitories, work permits, and home visitation. The men were initially housed in closed dormitories. Once they had proven themselves trustworthy, they would be transferred to open dormitories within the compound. Men who showed great trustworthiness would be permitted to work outside the compound. In some cases, men were even permitted to reside outside the compound under the supervision of a care family. Fewer than 5% of the 10,000 men who were given home leave during Paton's years at Deep Kloof ever broke the trust by failing to return. After publishing, Paton volunteered for service during World War II, but was refused. After the war he took a trip at his own expense to tour correctional facilities across the world. He toured Scandinavia, England, continental Europe, Canada, and the United States. During his time in Norway, he began work on his seminal novel Cry, the Beloved Country, which he completed over the course of his journey, finishing it on Christmas Eve in San Francisco in 1946. There, he met Aubrey and Marigold Burns, who read his manuscript and found a publisher. The editor Maxwell Perkins, noted for editing novels of Ernest Hemingway and Thomas Wolfe, guided Paton's first novel through publication with Scribner's. Paton published numerous books in the 1950s and became wealthy from the sales. Opposition to apartheid. In 1948, 4 months after the publication of Cry, the Beloved Country, the separatist National Party came to power in South Africa. In 1953, Paton founded the Liberal Party of South Africa, which fought against the apartheid legislation introduced by the National Party. He remained the president of the SALP until its forced dissolution by the apartheid regime in the late 1960s, officially because its membership comprised both blacks and whites. Paton was a friend of Bernard Friedman, founder of the Progressive Party. Paton's writer colleague Lawrence van der Post, who had moved to England in the 1930s, helped the party in many ways. The van der Post knew that the South African secret police were aware that he was paying money to Paton, but could not stop it by legal procedures. Paton himself adopted a peaceful opposition in protests against apartheid. As did many others in the party, some SALP members took a more violent route, and consequently some stigma did attach to the party. Paton's passport was confiscated on his return from New York in 1960, where he had been presented with the annual Freedom Award. It was not returned for 10 years. Paton retired to Bothers Hill, where he resided until his death. He is honored at the Hall of Freedom of the Liberal International Organization. Other works. Cry, the Beloved Country has been filmed twice and was the basis for the Broadway musical Lost in the Stars. Paton's second and third novels, Too Late the Fowler Open Up But Your Land is Beautiful, and his short stories, Tales from a Troubled Land, all deal with the same racial themes that concerned the author in his first novel. But Your Land is Beautiful was built on parallel life stories, letters, speeches, news and records in legal proceedings, and mixed fictional and real-life characters, such as Donald Molteno, Albert Lutherly and Hendrik Verwoerd. The novel is categorized as historical fiction, as it gives an accurate account of the resistance movement in South Africa during the 1960s. Paton attempts to imbue his characters with a humanity not expected of them. In this novel, for example, we meet the supposedly obdurate Afrikaner who contravenes the infamous Immorality Act. There are other Afrikaners too, who are led by their consciences and not by rules and regulations promulgated by a faceless, monolithic parliament. Paton was a prolific essay writer on race and politics in South Africa. In Save the Beloved Country he plays on the famous title of his first novel, but keeps a serious tone in discussing many of the famous personalities and issues on different sides of South Africa's apartheid struggle. His Anglican faith was another factor in his life and work. The title of one work is Instrument of Thy Peace. Paton also wrote 2 autobiographies. Towards the Mountain deals with Paton's life leading up to and including the publication of Cry, the Beloved Country, while Journey Continue takes its departure from that time onwards. He also wrote biographies of his friends Jan Hendrik Hofmeyr and Geoffrey Clayton. Another literary form that interested him throughout his life was poetry. The biographer Peter Alexander includes many of these poems in his Biography of Paton. Publications of Paton's work include a volume of his travel writing, The Lost City of the Kalahari, and a complete selection of his shorter writings, The Hero of Curry Road. The Alan Paton Award for Non-Fiction is conferred annually in his honor. Selected works: Cry, The Beloved Country, 1948, made into a film in 1951, directed by Zoltan Korda with a screenplay by Paton himself in 1995, directed by Daryl Rood, also a musical and an opera. Lost in the Stars, 1950, a musical based on the above work. Too Late, The Phalarope, 1953, The Land and People of South Africa, 1955, South Africa in Transition, 1956, Debbie Go Home, 1960, Tales from a Troubled Land, 1961, Hofmeyr, 1964, South African Tragedy, 1965, Sponhonor, 1965, The Long View, 1967, Instrument of Thy Peace, 1968, Contact and For You Departed, 1969, D.C. S. Oosthuizen Memorial Lecture, 1970, Case History of a Pinky, 1972, Apartheid and the Archbishop, The Life and Times of Geoffrey Clayton, Archbishop of Cape Town, 1973, Knocking on the Door, 1975, Towards the Mountain, 1980, But Your Land is Beautiful, 1981, Journey Continued, an Autobiography, 1988, Save the Beloved Country, 1989, The Hero of Curry Road, The Complete Short Pieces, 2008, Famous Lines. When a deep injury is done to us, we never recover until we forgive. If you wrote a novel in South Africa which didn't concern the central issues, it wouldn't be worth publishing. Cry, The Beloved Country, for the unborn child that is the inheritor of our fear. Let him not love the earth too deeply. For fear will rob him of all if he gives too much. To give up the task of reforming society is to give up one's responsibility as a free man. But the one thing that has power completely is love, because when a man loves, he seeks no power, and therefore he has power. I envision someday a great peaceful South Africa in which the world will take pride, a nation in which each of many different groups will be making its own creative contribution. God forgives us, who am I not to forgive?